Great morning, everybody in Facebook and YouTube land. Those watching the replay, we will be temporarily muted as we do our opening song. And I placed a link to the song in the chat. Maybe you will be able to hear it. We'll see how that works. Great morning, everyone. Great morning. Great morning. Happy Thursday. He did the impossible. He did the impossible. He did the impossible. My name is Minister Anika Apple, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to our morning glory prayer. on this Thursday morning on behalf of our senior pastor, the Reverend Dr. Nicole B. Simpson, and associate pastor, Reverend Dr. Angel Holcomb, who are our dynamic duo leading the Micah 7 Ministries team, congregation, our church, our leadership team. We are so blessed to have their leadership. And on behalf of our pastors and our leadership team, we welcome you. We are glad you are here. So, I love that we start off with song in the morning, and it's so important because God definitely has been clear that our worship life needs to continue to increase. In this song in particular, I remember the first time I heard it it was a couple weeks back, maybe a couple months now, but I immediately grabbed Shazam and it didn't even come up. And I was like, I need this song. And it occurred to me, even as I was listening this morning, when it says he did the impossible. It's interesting when you think about the tense. He did the impossible, which is saying it's already done. But if you hear the words in the song, it's talking about waiting on God to do the thing. And I feel like that's significant. Maybe it was or wasn't their plan in the way that they created the song. But what I hear is that the posture of knowing that God did the impossible is what we are supposed to be holding on to now in this moment. Now, we can look through the good book, right, and see all of the places where God did the impossible, and there was a lot. But it's the God did the impossible, this moment, when we're looking forward, that gives us the courage to keep on going. It's the recognition that because we know God is victorious, that God did the impossible because those plans are already done. The things that we've already laid at the altar are already done. The things that we've asked God for are already done. It says in the song, like, it may not be at the time that I wanted, but it always happens, but it's always on time because God has a perfect plan, and that is not who we are. We have our finite minds and we can just see what's happening in this very moment, right? The other thing that it said in the song that really touched me is, if I could do it by myself, I would. And that's in the very beginning of the song. And it is so true. I won't speak for you, but I will say for Anika Apple, if I had the opportunity to do it by myself, I would. And so what I know about myself, and I'm learning how to lessen the desire to do that, because I recognize that when my hands are fully off of things, that God shows up and does things in a way that are so miraculous that it can only be God, and God gets the glory. And sometimes in that in-between space, people on the outside looking in, you might know that it's God, but people on the outside looking in might make an assumption. They might make a leap and think that somehow you had something to do with it other than just being obedient and honoring God. And so as we think about this, when we approach our day with the recognition that when we create the space for God, when we take our hands off of things, we can guarantee that God is going to get the glory. And that's why we are here. Then we're moving ourselves, we're evolving ourselves into a place where we won't feel this pull, this constant pull of wanting to be the person who does things for ourselves. The other thing that I would say is, if we had a crystal ball, so to speak, if we could see all of the things in the future, it would change the way we feel about time today. And so since we don't have that ability, we have something better, which is faith. It's our trust in God, that because God knows all of those things, all of the intricacies of the plans of our lives, that when we trust God, that timing is always going to be right on time. So there's just some things I think that are important for us to reconcile onto ourselves if we're going to say God did the impossible. And I want to encourage you to use that tense when you're thinking about the situations that you still have before God, because I know I have one that I am waiting patiently on. And there probably are many, but there's one in particular in the front of my mind right now. And I'm just going to declare that God did the impossible, because it's impossible. When it happens, it will be miraculous. It's impossible for everyone and everything other than God. So, great morning to you again. We're going to go into the text in a moment. I'm going to take you into Psalm 116. However, last night God led me to God led me to Psalm 69. And there's something that I need to share in here. I'm not going to go back through this psalm. We just did this psalm within the last couple of weeks. It may have been like 2 weeks ago. And so I won't go back into it. Yeah, I think that's right, given where we are right now. But I did want to just bring something to life for you. So if we quickly go into Psalm 69, I'm going to be reading out of the Everyday Study Bible. So you'll remember this psalm. It's to the tune of lilies. And in here, it starts off with, it's a cry for help. It starts off with all of these things that are going wrong. And then it talks about, but I'm going to pray to you, Lord, for favor because of your great love, answer me. So it starts to take the things that it was declaring about the situation in the moment to this like posture of like, but I know that you're going to pull me from the mud. I know that you won't let me sink. You'll save me from those who hate me, etc. And it goes on to talk about all of the transgressions that have happened. You see my shame and disgrace. You know all my enemies and what they have said. Insulted, broken my heart. They left me weak. I looked for sympathy, but there was none. I found none to comfort me. And it goes on and on. And then there's this piece where it's like, and this is the piece for me. I was like, ugh, then it starts to talk about, let their own feast cause their ruin. Let their feast trap them and pay them back. It's all of this anger about what the enemies have done. And it occurred to me the other day and I heard what Pastor said last night in full agreement, that God doesn't need the adversary for anything in your life, to be clear. And what we get, the benefit that we get of that worthy adversary, is the continuation of the reminder that we always need to be seeking after God, that our eyes have to be on God. And in that, I know for myself, part of my personal journey has been one where I like the good feelings. I'm not so happy about. I'm not so welcoming to the ones I don't like, anger being one of those. I've shared with you before in the past that growing up, that I was a child that cried a lot. Some of my family would probably say that I was a crybaby, and they would be true. They would be honest. They would be telling the truth. I cried a lot. I don't like that title, but I did cry a lot. And so as I got older, I was like, I'm done crying. You guys know the story. I'm not going to do that anymore. And anger has been very similar for me. I don't like that place of being angry about things, so much so. I desire harmony and peace so much so that I would just push past those feelings of anger to get to this place of peace, without realizing that what I was doing with my anger is like, just imagine I'm just swallowing it, right? And as I continue to swallow it every single time, it's like, I just want to get to peace. Did we really reconcile? Not quite, but close enough. I just want to get back to peace. You heard me. I heard you. I don't know that we solved anything, but it's okay. I'm just going to get back to peace. So I'm just going to swallow it, right? At some point, like when you are at Thanksgiving and you just keep eating and eating, you know what's going to happen, right? It is going to start to permeate in your body. It's going to start to build up. You have too much of it. And I'm here to tell you that it absolutely can, will, and does manifest itself in the physical. And there are all different ways that you can name conditions that come from your swallowing things that you are supposed to release. You have the feeling for a reason. And that's what I stopped here to tell you, is that as much as we may not want to tell God we are angry about things, we're disappointed, we're hurt, as much as we may not have to want to face into the things that happen where we feel that we have been wronged, what we cannot do is not tell God the truth. And so I came here really to read this footnote to you at the end of 69. And here's what it says. The psalmist has been wronged and wrongly treated by his enemies. And here he lets them feel the full force of his anger. He holds back no punches as he asks God to give them what they deserve. The psalm, and I don't know how that makes you feel. I'm like, ooh, just there's just something about the way I was raised. Like, you don't want somebody to get what they deserve, right? I don't want to get what I deserve. I want to get what God says I deserve. But sometimes maybe there's some things that I did that would negate the things that God wants to give me because of what I did. Like, let's just be honest about who we were, who we are. We heard what Pastor called out last night, right? And then it says he holds back no punches as he asks God to give them what they deserve. The psalmist invites us to express our anger to God honestly. Anger is not always wrong. After all, God is angry towards those who oppress the helpless and subvert justice. If there is nothing else that you remember today, I want you to hold on to those last lines. Anger is not always wrong. After all, God is angry towards those who oppress the helpless and subvert justice, which means if you are in a place where you have felt helpless, where justice has been subverted, where you have not been honored by the systems, by the people, etc., so forth, that angers God. It is okay for us to say that we're angry. And what God would prefer is that we have those conversations with God. And then we leave it at a place where we say, but we know you are a just God and we trust your perfect will. And so we don't have to do anything about reconciling this situation except wait for your instruction. That is the thing that we need to know. And I would just tell you, for those of you who do navigate these emotions well, it is a wonderful thing, because what you won't have to do is this work of like bringing all that stuff up from your ankles all through your body to bring it out into the world, right? To heal those things. If I look at the time it's taken me to heal the things that I swallowed for all of those years of my life, and I had to do it over again, I realized it wouldn't give me the knowledge to be here before you today to give you this story. But if I could give you the testimony without choosing to do it that way, wisdom would say I would go back and do it differently. And what I know is that because of some of the things that I decided to minimize in my own feelings, but my feelings didn't go away, it created an impact in those relationships, my marriage being a perfect example. I like peace. I wanted peace. And I held on to peace above some of the days where I needed to stand and advocate for myself. And I don't have a desire to go back to that. But I'm grateful that I can look back and recognize that because of those choices, it created a distance that was very difficult to come back from. And I can't say that it would have changed the situations because God has a perfect plan. But I know I'm supposed to learn from it now. And I want to encourage you to remember that anger is informing you about something that matters, as does your sadness, as does depression, as does whatever you may be going through. So instead of ignoring the feelings, sit with them and ask, what am I supposed to see here? What is this trying to inform for me? A lot of my anger was about boundaries. And I'll share this story because now I understand why God brought this to my remembrance this morning. My dad lives here in Atlanta. When I first moved to Atlanta years ago, it was 2 years after he moved into his house. He built a house here. He had a big holiday celebration with the family. And he said, he said, I built this house because I wanted us to have a place where we could all gather as a family. Now, to be clear, it's not a mansion. It's not, it doesn't have an exorbitant amount of rooms or anything like that. It is just spaced nicely to entertain. One Christmas, we fit somewhere between 26 and 30 people there. Not because people had their own bedrooms. There were like 5 and 6 of us to a bedroom. People on pallets, sleeping on floor. Every kid in that whole family sleeping in the same bed for 2 days. Like, it was like that, okay? And so you think of it like the way that the way that he created and blessed this space was one where he wanted us to have the ability to come together. The funny thing is, when I moved down in 2000, in the time where we were getting ready for the place that we were going to be working, it was under construction. So we were working in another location, which was closer to where he lived. So I'm like, okay, I'll stay with my dad for a bit. I'll find an apartment and then I'll transition there when we're getting ready to move into the other place. It took me a little bit of time to find an apartment. But when I was there about a week, my dad says, you have 30 days. And I was like, huh? He's like, 30 days. He said, this is my limit. You know, people come to town as they're transitioning into Atlanta and stuff like that. They asked if they can stay with me, and everybody has a 30-day limit. And I was like, I'm your kid. Like, I didn't think I had limits, right? No, 30 days. And I was like, okay. And you probably like, you know, I mean, you can imagine, but you've met my mom, you've heard me talk about my dad, good people, very kind. They are, you know, I am them, they are me. And he was serious about that thing. When it hit day 27, he was like, you got 3 more days. And I was like, say what now? I have the apartment, but I'm still cleaning there periodically after I get off from work and all of this stuff, right? And so on day 28, he meets me at the door and I have the vacuum cleaner in hand. And I was like, I'm borrowing your vacuum so I can go vacuum because I know I only have 2 days. And he said, good. I was like, he's for real. Like, he's really going to put me out in 30 days. And so on day 29, I got my stuff and hightailed it up the highway to put all my stuff in my apartment. I was taking my time and he was setting boundaries. And what's so funny to me is that if I look at a lot of the places of friction that I had with him as I was growing up, it was because he was great at setting boundaries and I had none. What am I trying to tell you? These things that happen for us are supposed to inform our behavior. They're supposed to be recognition for us. Had I stopped to think, not I'm angry, but what is my anger trying to teach me about this? It's these two things are in friction. So what is it for you to learn in this situation? Because a lot of times when we're angry, we focus on the other person and we've not realized that we need to allow it to inform things about ourselves. See, I'm good. If I'm having a disagreement with someone, I will go look at myself all day long. I'll be like, here's what I didn't like about what you did, but oh my gosh, what did I do? How did I do it? Like, I'm good at doing that. But it's the informing what needs to be different and then putting that into action that needs to happen. And clearly, God needed me to go down this road longer than I thought I would. And I honor you, God. So just know your feelings exist for a reason. And I know both pastors have been talking about heart work. And God has been saying to me for months now, the character of God. We are to bring forward the character of God. So we are using our examples of knowing what it looks like to honor God in the way we interact with people. How can we be representatives? How do we get to truly be the remnant if we are operating in ways that are not bringing forth the character of God? Minister Slade said yesterday, I'm trying to stay in alignment with the messaging. This is in alignment with the messaging. We have to own our feelings, feel our feelings, understand what it is informing, and then behave in a way that is in accordance with what God says we are supposed to do about those feelings. And you won't get to that last piece unless you sit before God and say, why am I feeling like this? And you can't get there if you won't be honest about how you feel. So take it from me, the person who would love to avoid my own feelings. I get in the middle and handle conflict with y'all all day long. This is what I do for work. It is a skill set because I like to get to harmony. But in my own self, in my own stuff, I don't like it so much. And you know what? God has made me focus in on the lack of boundaries for over a year. And there's more to come. And God has had me addressing situations where I have felt wronged and hurt and impacted by people I love. The more that we can realize and learn that we are all here to teach each other lessons and not take it so personally, the better. Because what I would submit to you is that as much as it may bother you that situations have happened, they truly were here to teach you lessons that you will need next on your path. Let's go into Psalm 116, and then I'm going to pray. It says, this is entitled Thanksgiving for Escaping Death. I love the Lord because he listens to my prayers for help. He paid attention to me, so I will call to him for help as long as I live. The ropes of death bounded me. The fear of the grave took hold of me. I was troubled and sad. And then I called out the name of the Lord. I said, please, Lord, save me. He did the impossible. The Lord is kind and does what is right. Our God is merciful. The Lord watches over the foolish. When I was helpless, he saved me. I said to myself, relax, because the Lord takes care of you. Lord, you saved me from death. You stopped my eyes from crying. You kept me from being defeated. In the Message translation, these next couple verses say, I'm striding in the presence of God, alive in the land of the living. I stayed faithful, though overwhelmed, despite a ton of bad luck, despite giving up on the human race, saying they're all liars and cheats. Do you see how things are coming together? So I'm striding in the presence of God. And I wanted to read that in the Message because that's different than I'm walking. Striding gives you a different perspective. When I think of somebody striding, they're kind of like John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever, walking down the street in that, like, what was it, a white suit with a black shirt? Like that, you know, I'm laying all the way back. My legs are coming out fully in front of me. And it's like, I got that lean going on. I'm striding. I'm walking with pride and confidence. And the definition of it, it says it's a long, decisive step in a specified direction. How can we be striding with God if we're not confident in where we're going? I'm striding in the presence of God, alive in the land of the living, because God did the impossible. All of these things that we heard about in 69, all of these things that we heard about in the first two paragraphs here, those things have been overcome by God. I'm still in the land of the living because God did the impossible. I stayed faithful, though overwhelmed, and despite a ton of bad luck, despite giving up on the human race, because I was angry, because they hurt me, because they disappointed me, because they left me for dead, because of whatever, they left me out in the cold. They forgot all about me. They didn't think about me when I was down and out. They weren't there for me. They didn't do the things they said they were going to do. They didn't show up when they said they were supposed to show up. Whatever the things are that you've been feeling, that anger, let it go. But recognize that God already did the impossible. If they weren't there on time, if they didn't do the thing they said they were going to do, then you know what? The reality is this, these two things. One, God didn't need them to do it because God still did the impossible. Two, if they made a commitment before God and it was about their obedience to God to show up and do the thing they committed to you, then God has that. Let go and let God handle that with that person. Let God handle your light work. What you need to do is recognize, even though they left you for dead, you are still here. You're still in the land of the living. God still chose to give you another chance, to give you another day, to continue to give you a story that you can tell and inspire others. The things that you can go back and say, and even though they did these things, even though they treated me in this way, I'm still here and I'm still confident in God. It grew my faith instead of shrinking it. It grew my confidence in what God is doing on the inside of me instead of making me ball up in a corner and cry and want to die. This is the stuff that God keeps on trying to show us. If we will open our eyes. I'm not saying don't feel the feelings, feel them. But know that if you are stuck in a spot, it's because you're choosing to stay there, because the word says that God is coming for us, that God lets us stride in their presence because we have confidence. If we just stay faithful, even though we're overwhelmed, even though there's been bad luck, even though we wanted to give up on humanity. And let me tell you something, there's not a week, not 1 week, where God does not take me back to something that they have said to me that reminds me not to give up on people. That's right. As a person who loves harmony, who knows I'm here for people, because sometimes people make me mad. They disappoint me. I look out at the shenanigans out in the world and I'm just like, what is going on? It says here in the text, I'm going to finish off in the Message, what can I give back to God for the blessings he's poured out on me? I'd lift a high cup of salvation, a toast to God. I'll pray in the name of God because that is what God asks us to do. I'll complete what I promised God I do. Sound familiar? That's integrity.
the commitments that we make before God, and I'll do it together with his people. Even though a moment ago I wanted to give up on the human race, I'm going to stand by my brothers and sisters, and we're going to do the work of God together. When they arrive at the gates of death, God welcomes those who love him. Oh God, here I am, your servant, your faithful servant. Set me free for your service. Set me free for your service. Unleash me from the chains and the bondage of the world so that I can do what I am intended to do here, which is serve you. That means I have to surrender my will to God. I'm ready to offer the thanksgiving sacrifice and pray in the name of God. I'll complete what I promised God I'd do, and I'll do it in the company of his people, Micah. I'll do it in the company of his people, in the place of worship, in God's house, in Jerusalem, in God's city, as the remnant. It doesn't say that in the text, but that's what I'm telling you to remember, because that's who God says we are. And then it ends by saying, hallelujah. Father God, we just thank you and we bless you, God, for all of the things that you broke open today. God, we thank you for your consistency in showing us. Thank you, God, for helping us to accept the fact that these emotions that we have, God, that they're here to teach us things, and that when we talk to you, that you will help us make sense of what we are feeling and what we are going through, that you'll allow them to inform us, to remind us of things, to ensure that we stay on the path that allows us to do the work that we came here to do for you. God, we know that there's a reasonable sacrifice that you've asked for us that goes along with the reasonable service. And that for some, it is relinquishing the activity of still living in a prideful way, God. We can admit to you and to each other that we don't always have it all together, that we don't always have it figured out, but we do have you. So thank you for reminding us that no matter what it is that we're experiencing, we can always leave it before you, that you are our healer, God, and that you can't heal that which we will not admit to you, that you are our ever-present help, and that we cannot get help if we won't ask you for it. That all of the things that we need, all of the provisions, all of the plans that we desire have already been established for us if we would just surrender ourselves to walk on the path that you have declared. God, it is our prayer that you continue this work that you're doing in us. Continue to reveal the things, the conditions of our hearts. And even where it may be difficult, God, show us the faces of those who you have assigned to us to help us do this work, God. I know that it is not by accident that in this moment you have put this house together with all of the people in the congregation, the experience, the stories, the expertise, the ability to stand proxy, the listeners, the love, the unconditional love that sits in this house, that you brought it together so that we could be a resource for one another. Help us to understand and know that this is a safe place, God. A place where when we do the work, you will allow us to then live our lives in a way that honors you, where we can really do the work on the outside. But right now, you continue to call us back to looking within. I pray that across the next few days, God, that we would have an encounter with each and every one of us, showing us the things that we still need to do, that still need to be addressed, the ways that we have the propensity to fall back to, God, so that we can change those things. We can walk the evolution of changing them. We know healing doesn't happen in just one moment, that it truly is a journey, God. But we've got to make strides forward. And I pray that the messages of the last couple of weeks have touched every single place that it was that you needed us to, in order for each person at Micah to know that they have been seen and that they're heard and that you recognize the challenges and the struggles that they may be going through. Father, as always, I pray that you would meet every single person in their places of need, God. There's so much grief and heaviness. There's so much physical healing that needs to happen. And there's emotional healing, God. There's some spiritual wounds too. I pray, God, that whatever it is that each person stands in need of, God, that you would meet them today, in this day, God. Let them know that they are seen and they are heard and they are loved, and that you are ready to do the journey with them, God. We ask for your continued blessings and covering in Jesus' name. Amen. As it is time for us to depart, I just want to encourage you to make sure that you have your time tomorrow and Saturday on your own. Come back to the text today. I feel like I did 116, a moderate amount of justice. So I would love it if you would go back and read through it. Read through it in the Message translation. The colorful language really brings it to life. Sunday, Pastor will be bringing forth the word at 9:45 a.m. at 15 Corporate Place South in Piscataway, New Jersey, Suite 496. As Minister Slade says, you got to be in the building for the building, and she is so right. So I want to encourage all of you to go out. You know, the schedule for next week will resume prayer again on Monday at 8 a.m. with our senior pastor and continue on through our normal schedule. I believe that these are the last few days that you have to order your journal. If you've not done that, please make sure that you reach out to MIT Grandy to do that. And the journals are $50. And I believe they're going into print pretty soon. So we need to know what those final totals are. I believe we have until Sunday, but don't wait. If you can get the information in today or tomorrow, I am sure that Associate Pastor Holcomb and MIT Grandy will be very appreciative as they're trying to orchestrate and organize all of that. I wish all of you a wonderful and peaceful week. Thank you again for the birthday wishes for Anaya. I don't know if I said that last week, but she had a wonderful birthday, and so I appreciate that. I don't think we have any other birthdays today. I'm not seeing anything in the chat. I apologize if I've missed anyone, and I look forward to worshiping with you all on Sunday morning. As always, peace and blessings. Love you all. Have a wonderful Thursday.